and that's it.
There's a little bit more to it. She was also encouraging people on our side of the Atlantic to have a much more open view about UFOs and the paranormal in general, if compared to people on her side of the Atlantic. So there is also some, I would say, cross-Atlantic pollination that we're trying to do as well.
Let's take it back to the beginning real briefly here. How did you get involved in studying UFOs?
It's a complicated story, but I had some experience when I was a kid. I did not see a UFO, but I was watching my brothers seeing a UFO, and I couldn't get an access to the binoculars, even though I bugged them so much. And finally, when I got the binoculars, I could not see a UFO. So it marked me quite a bit. Then time has passed, and then when I did my PhD studies, I met a friend who was very much into UFOs, and that's where I started to go back to my interests, and I started to read avidly on UFOs. Although I became quite disappointed that the ETH was so dominant and had so little to show for in terms of evidence. And on top of that, there was a time, it was in the 1990s, at the time where the conspiracy theory was reaching levels of delusion never seen before. So I decided, well, you know what, let's start to study these things from a different perspective, because we're going nowhere now with the ETH and the conspiracy theories.
Why don't you give us an example or examples of how many conspiracy theories that you count as being predominant or valid sociologically?
Well, the conspiracy theories that are actually valid are the ones that are, of course, proven. The obvious one is if we think about the Watergate, there is people starting to speculate about President Nixon and his use of former CIA operatives. And it took two journalists working on it part-time to figure it out in 2 years. So this is a conspiracy, a real one, that was open and then disclosed quite quickly. And it's very hard to hide things, actually. There's always someone who has an issue with his or her conscience, and we'll talk. And then we'll show evidence, and we can disclose. In the case of UFOs, it's always murky, it's always inconclusive, it's always the cousin or the brother or the sister living 3 doors away that heard something in a bar. I mean, really, these are phenomena that are not based on facts, but based on rumors, and then those rumors get to life on their own. So there are conspiracies that are real, and they are founded relatively quickly. Well, the other ones are rumors, and they're more along the lines of mythology, creating urban myths, like the example I gave.
Well, how about the ever-present theory that many of these what appear to be nuts and bolts sightings are actually some sort of exotic military secret technology, aerial platforms, psychotronic weapons platforms that are trotted out to sort of garner some sort of response from a particular target area of the unsuspecting public. I mean, that to me is, at least in this country, is one of the predominant, if you want, conspiracy theory that attempts to explain at least some UFO sightings. Where do you come down on the whole idea of exotic, real nuts and bolts human-derived technology?
Oh, I'm convinced that there are a number of sightings. There were actually aircrafts or drones or other flying machines created by humans that were perceived as odd, and then people thought that they were UFOs from another world. Definitely. Is it the majority? No, I would think it's a small minority, because working with the military, I know that in these kinds of situations, they try to use these equipment in remote places where they can use it and see if it works. Because obviously, if ordinary citizens can watch these things, then the enemies, the Soviet Union during the Cold War and others, could also watch and see what's going on. So they account for some, yes, but I would not say many.
Well, once some of this equipment is deemed operational and viable, I would think if it's of an exotic nature, they'd want to, trot it out and test it, over some sort of public airspace to gauge response, to see if people report it as a UFO, how they describe it, whether they file a report with their local law enforcement, whether civilian UFO groups are called, whether the media picks it up, whether the sighting is, sort of taken into the media and then they put their inevitable spin on it and disseminate it out into the culture. This is one area that I've done quite a bit of active research and thinking about, and I do agree with you that at least a certain portion of sightings are misidentified, exotic technology. Well, I think the adage that you hear most often is that we are only aware of technology that has been operational for 15 to 20 years. Things that are operational now, if the formula is correct, won't be publicly acknowledged for another 15 or 20 years. So that, with the pace of technology and development of scientific principles behind some of these technologies, you can really accomplish a lot in a generation before then you allow the public to know about it.
Let's have that example in our next segment.
Okay.
Our guest is Eric Ouellet. The book is Illuminations. You're on with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
I know that a lot of our listeners are interested in UFOs, the issue of giant skeletons found in America, paranormal investigations, and what the top researchers think about such topics. One online magazine has been presenting such unusual information since 1985. It is Alternate Perceptions Magazine at apmagazine.info. Use their search function to find articles on just about every topic imaginable. That's apmagazine.info. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
Dr. Joe Wallach is not your typical doctor. Both a veterinarian and naturopathic physician, Dr. Wallach asked, why does America spend more money on health care by far and yet ranks 50th in health and longevity worldwide? The doctor believes that people should be empowered with a basic understanding of nutrition, then take charge of their life to attain optimal health and longevity through nutrition, not by toxic prescription drugs that lead to side effects, requiring more toxic prescription drugs. Talk about being dependent on drug companies, to our own destruction no less. This is clearly a deadly recipe. Doc Wallach's message is resonating with an increasing number of Americans who are waking up to all the government and big pharma manipulation of our healthcare system. I like what Doc Wallach is saying and doing to enlighten people and have joined forces to help this tireless crusader spread his message. Visit gcnminerals.com and listen to Dr. Wallach's Deadly Recipes lecture. It makes a lot of sense, and I invite you to join the GCN Minerals team. Go to gcnminerals.com. That's gcnminerals.com.
Today, more than ever, it's imperative that you protect your digital privacy. EDEC Digital Forensics Signal Blocking Anti-Radiation Anti-Surveillance Faraday Bags shield the contents of your phones, tablets, and key fobs from 4G, Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, NFC, and more. Find us at edecdf.com/radio or call us now at 805-222-4584. That's 805-222-4584. Radio listeners get 20% off your order.
Are you tired of commuting to a job that makes someone else rich, working harder than ever, but getting nowhere? Do you hate spending hundreds of dollars every week on daycare, having someone else raise your children? With our opportunities, you can start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss, work from home, and live a happier life. At Be the Boss Network, you'll find hundreds of work-from-home opportunities that you can literally start today and be earning money as soon as next week. Go to freedom106.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss. Get out of the rat race. Work from home. Go to freedom106.com right now and change your life today. That's freedom, the number 106.com. Go to freedom106.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You be the boss. Go to freedom106.com.
We use mobile devices right against our bodies every day, but growing scientific evidence has emerged showing serious health risks associated with exposure to EMF radiation emitted from these devices. The solution is Defender Shield, the most effective mobile radiation shielding ever developed. Defender Shield blocks virtually 100% of EMF radiation from cell phones, tablets, and laptops, and starts at just $64.99. Buy now at DefenderShield.com. For 10% off, use promo code GCN. DefenderShield.com, the worldwide leader in mobile radiation shielding.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So, I'm kind of under the weather, big time, so we're letting Chris do the work. But I'm still here. So therefore, I still keep the schedule. So
You're a real trooper, Gene.
I'm something I haven't figured out what yet, Chris.
Okay. As we were going into break, I was discussing the likelihood that at least some percentage of sightings that are reported, at least in North America, could be exotic military technology that is still secret and classified. A good example would be a number of years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the CIA made the big announcement that the SR-71 Blackbird was probably responsible for, and they made the amazing statement that all UFO sightings could be attributed to the SR-71 Blackbird. To me, that's kind of ludicrous because they fly at such a high altitude in a straight line. They're ballistic in nature. They don't exhibit, non-ballistic behavior. But it does kind of give a little bit of insight into the thinking of the national security apparatus. You go into the book really looking at the UFO phenomenon based on work that has already been done in the realm of parapsychology. And I think you do a very, very good job of showing how PK events, psychokinesis, other psi events actually could be overlaid onto the UFO phenomenon. And I'm sure, over the course of the show, we're going to get into all that. But why don't you first give us a background on your thinking, how it developed from that initial almost sighting experience that you had, that you watched your brothers have. How did you develop into the scientist that we now see today, who is really groundbreaking in attempting to explain things with more of a parapsychological explanation? Well, what was your development like?
Well, in reading both UFO literature and the parapsychology literature, one thing that struck me very strongly is how, especially a UFO wave, so large amount of sightings, these events tend to, if you look at the general structure of the events, they seems to be very similar to the poltergeist event, or where things are moving around in the house and people don't understand what's going on. On the surface, these events seems very different. So people perceive objects in the sky on one hand, and on the other hand, they start to see the furniture moving by itself, or electric equipment starting on its own in a family house. But if you look at the structure of those events, the unfolding is very, very similar. And that's why I started to have a hunch that there is something that is actually more along the lines of the paranormal when we look at UFOs, rather than something from outer space. And of course, there is the strong argument that if you look at the UFOs from an ETH perspective, then you need to have either a tissue sample that's not from this earth, or a piece of equipment that's not from this earth. And in over 70 years of modern ufology, we have absolutely nothing to show for. So combining all these ideas together, I'm starting to see that, maybe parapsychology has actually a lot to offer to understand UFOs.
Well, and that leads us back to that question of potential government involvement. There's many true believer types out there in the ETH that are convinced of the conspiracy theory that the government has actually recovered alien technology, recovered bodies, and some stories even live aliens. But of course, all this is classified and we'll never know about it. I think your argument there is that too many people would have to be involved and somebody would grow a conscience and spill the beans.
That's correct. And actually, I did look at other governments, because a lot of the conspiracy theories is coming from the United States, but many governments around the world had to deal with the UFO phenomena. And they started studies about that, sometimes big, sometimes small, but and they all came to some conclusion. That's the strength of, I would say, all that international research, so to speak, on UFOs, is that whatever it is, it's not dangerous, it's not a threat to national security, and it's so elusive, so hard to study that really it's not up to the military to deal with that. It's a very different perspective from the conspiracy theory, but the government of the United States, in my view, had in general the same approach. Yes, they had more interest in UFO than they were willing to say many years ago. In the end, they came to the same conclusion. It's not dangerous. They don't know what it is, but we're not going to study something that is so flimsy, so hard to understand.
You mentioned early on in your book, which I highly recommend to our listeners, this is one of the more important books, in my estimation, that have come out in actually many years, going all the way back to some of Vallée's work, some of the work of, as you point out here, Jerome Clark and Lauren Coleman. There's an interesting quote in here from a work that they co-authored together in the mid-'70s, that they felt that the objective manifestations of UFOs are psychokinetically generated byproducts of those unconscious processes which shape a culture's vision of the other world, existing only temporarily. They are at best only quasi-physical. I think that kind of sums up possibly a doorway in which you can open into a whole new world of understanding about these objects, which you absolutely dive into feet first. Why don't you explain, first of all, where those connecting points are between the paraphysical, the not quite subjective, not quite objective, but as George Hansen, myself, and others love the word liminal, which is like standing in the doorway and not being either in one room or another room, and then some sort of trigger kind of sets you off in one direction, either subjectively or objectively, depending on the amount of information you have and depending on your kind of pre-designed wants and desires about the subject. Why don't we kind of look at parapsychology and then how it's liminal and how that can be applied to the UFO phenomenon?
The key idea here is that when we talk about parapsychological event, we're talking about information that is received by non-normal means, so think about telepathy here, or information that is modified by non-normal means. Here's maybe more complicated to understand, but when an object is moving, it has a direction, has a composition. This is information. So if you change the composition of an object or its direction, you're actually changing the information about it. So that's the perspective here that's taken. So when we think about UFO, I can see there are two ways that this can happen. There might be something physical, earth lights, balls of lightning, some sort of plasma, or even a regular plane or helicopter in the sky, or there's actually no physical object. What makes it a parapsychological event is that people see in those objects, if there are, or in their quote-unquote hallucination, they obtain information about something that through non-normal means. And what I mean by that is that if you have more than one observers that are not connected to each other and they see a UFO, whether there is, again, an object behind it or not, and they come to see the object by giving a similar description, and yet they were not in the same direction or there was no objects, then there's something happened. They shared information telepathically, or they had some sort of premonition or clairvoyance. So that's what makes it parapsychological, is that is the information they share or the information they receive about an object.
We've got more to come with Eric Ouellet and Jean and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pulaski of the Pulaski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states. Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
Water is the single most important thing your body needs, so you want to be sure it's the best for you and your family. Since 2005, thousands have depended on Berkey purified water. The Berkey Guy provides the lowest priced filtration systems in every size. For incredibly delicious water now and in an emergency, get to GoBerkey.com or call 877-886-3653. 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com.
Chronic inflammation is now known to block your ability to repair and compromises your immune system, making you more vulnerable to all diseases. Since poor diet, injuries, or stress are all contributing factors, many people suffer from inflammation. Your body's number one means of neutralizing inflammation and the pain that it may be causing is glutathione. Glutathione is the body's number one peptide to neutralize free radicals and thus stop inflammation.
Hi, my name is Jason. I'm 44 years old. For 10 years, I had been suffering from chronic pain in my abdomen and groin that radiated down into my feet. After 3 weeks on One World Way, the pain in my feet reduced by 50%, and the overall pain in my body reduced significantly as well. I ran out of One World Way, and the pain returned. I got another container, and again, after 3 weeks, the pain reduced significantly throughout my body. I'd highly recommend One World Way to anyone dealing with chronic pain due to inflammation.
Call 888-988-3325 or visit oneworldway.com. That's oneworld, WHEY.com.
No other network provides the level of customer service we do. When it comes to radio advertising, we are your one-stop shop. And no matter how big or small your business is, we can help. Email us at advertise@gcnlive.com, and an experienced advertising executive will help you take the first step towards driving more customers to your business or website. Advertise at gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Today, more than ever, it's imperative that you protect your digital privacy. EDEC Digital Forensics, Signal Blocking, Anti-Radiation, Anti-Surveillance Faraday Bags shield the contents of your phones, tablets, and key fobs from 4G, Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, NFC, and more. Find us at edecdf.com/radio or call us now at 805-222-4584. That's 805-222-4584. Radio listeners get 20% off your order.
Hi, it's Grant Cameron from PresidentialUFO.com. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, we have Eric Ouelett. The book is called Illuminations. Chris?
Eric, go ahead and kind of pick up where you left off. We were talking about how these things are related, parapsychology and PK type events and the UFO phenomenon.
Yes. So if there's an object, especially if these objects are of a strong electromagnetic nature, it can induce hallucinations. There's a lot of research on that. But that hallucination doesn't mean that the person is crazy. It means that the person sees things, and whatever that person sees may contain information that is transmitted either to another person or information about the future. So that's where the parapsychological aspects start to show. If there's no object, again, we have an hallucination, but it may be shared by more than one people. I'll give you a specific example. Recently in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, very recently, there was two groups of people in two different cars at the very busy intersections who saw a UFO very close. I would say, to use Hynek typologies, was an encounter of the first kind. And yet, only these two groups of people saw it, and it was a very busy intersection in the middle of the day. And those two groups contacted a UFO and paranormal organization locally, not knowing of each other's what was going on. So here's an interesting case. Was there something physical in the sky? Probably not, because otherwise other people would have seen it and it would have been in the news right away. Doesn't mean that nothing anomalous happened? Absolutely not. I mean, if two groups of people independently see something and provide the same description, then we have to conclude that they shared information through non-normal means, which we call telepathy if you want. So that's what makes UFO events interesting, is because of this access to information through non-normal means.
You know, you mentioned that in the book that, electromagnetic energy can have an effect on human cognition, and but doesn't there have to be some sort of source of the emanations? I mean, if these are, manifestations of some sort of misidentification or delusion or, some sort of, sort of hallucinatory experience, doesn't there have to be some sort of energy generator that's creating these EM effects that then affect the mind?
Indeed, there has to be a source. The research on the topic is still evolving right now, but there are some known sources. So you can think about power towers, radars, stations, as well as more exotic natural phenomena like earth lights, balls of lightnings, and we think maybe some variation in geomagnetic, the natural earth geomagnetic field may have an impact on the brain. There was a research done recently about a haunting castle where there was a ghost that was seen by many, many people over decades. And yet they saw that the ghost was always seen when the person was in bed, in the same bed. So they did some research about the geomagnetic field where normally the person would put his or her head on the bed. And they saw a very significant variation in the geomagnetic field, which provides some interesting perspective that it doesn't need to have a very powerful source like being just beside a radar station to create that kind of effects on the brain.
Of course, the skeptic would argue, or the ETH believer would argue that because UFO reports are so, or UAP reports, I think, as you point out, and very justifiably so, is a more accurate, I think, acronym, which is Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, or AAO, Anomalous Aerial Objects. Because of the wide distribution of sighting reports from all over the world, doesn't that kind of nullify any sort of cell towers, power lines? I mean, if you're in the middle of Central Africa and you don't even have phone lines anywhere near you, ground lines or hard lines, or any sort of machinery capable of producing the type of EM fields that we're talking about, how do you explain that? A guy on a safari driving along sees an object that gets close to him, his engine dies, the object then as it departs, the engine comes back on. There's a lot of examples of very, very well documented sightings that you would kind of have to scratch your head because I don't think in at least some cases, I don't think there's any explanation for the type of effects that could be attributed to some sort of EM field and the human reaction or response to that field.
Well, I'm not saying that every single observation is caused by that. I never said that in my book, and I'm not saying that now. What I'm saying is that sources of electromagnetic fields includes the geomagnetic fields, and so that it's more spread than we think. That's what I'm saying. So let's be clear on that. The second point about that is the fact that oftentimes people are also in what we call an altered state of consciousness. So they're like more or less in trance, which is a state of mind where hallucinations are more likely to happen. And when I say hallucination, again, I'm not saying that the input that gets in the brain of the person is not coming from the outside. Yes, they may actually get some message telepathically. But the point is that there are all kinds of things that can create altered state of consciousness. Electromagnetic fields is one of them, but it might be some just normal person that they are more prone to that. So it's easier for them to be in state of trance. And then other circumstances are such that there's something that they can start to see that looks like a UFO. So geomagnetic energy and electromagnetic energy is only one piece of the equation. And in my book, I think I'm pretty clear that saying that's one part of it, but it's far from being everything.
Yeah, I understand that, and I was just pointing out that there are a lot of reports that you would have to go in another direction to try to explain the kinds of human response to the phenomenon and how that phenomenon interacts with the witness or witnesses in this example. Just strikes me because I've had a number of reports. I've been a field investigator for 10 solid years back in the 90s. And I had a number of cases where groups of witnesses, when interviewed separately about a particular event, they tended to have some of the general information, usually color, size, that sort of thing, fairly, I think, consistently agreed. But when it came to duration, sequence of events, the type of feeling that they got, they were all over the map. And there were even there was a couple of reports where a group of people and only a certain number of the people were able to actually experience the sighting event. The others didn't know what they were talking about. So that, of course, indicates to me that there's some sort of social psycho element going on. And, I think a little later on, obviously, we're going to get into that. But, the way you start the book out, I really, really appreciate, because you look at, for instance, the poltergeist phenomenon and how you can break it down. And you came up with your, it's called recurrent spontaneous psychokinetic effects in hauntings, for example. And let's go ahead and look at RSPK and how that is fairly predictable in terms of a model of outlining how particular events are expressed, for lack of a better word, and then how that expression seems to be organized. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that there is an apparent connection in terms of UFO waves and how a poltergeist series of poltergeist events, for instance, seem to mimic one another in a bell curve.
Let's break here, and we'll continue with Eric Ouellet. And Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Conspiracy Journal is your #1 source for the hidden world of the weird and strange. We bring you thought-provoking and controversial material for free-thinking individuals who are seeking what is really going on in our world today. Some of this material may adversely affect you. Other pieces are meant to enlighten. Either way, be prepared to be intrigued by such things as the reality of UFOs, ghosts, strange creatures from time and space, hidden conspiracies, time travel, Nikola Tesla, suppressed technology, and a whole lot more. You can find out more by visiting our website at conspiracyjournal.com. There you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter sent directly to your email address. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Are your Google search results killing you? Unflattering content in blogs, news articles, online reviews, social media, or other sources can jeopardize your reputation, your business, and your livelihood. Let Reputation.com help. Our patented technology will make the truth about you more visible while pushing down unwanted negative content. Improve your Google search results. Call Reputation.com at 1-800-831-0771 for a free consultation. That's 800-831-0771.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS?
Get on board with the Tax Admiral. Don't take on the IRS alone. I'll cut penalties and reduce your overall tax bill. Sometimes I can even get it zeroed out completely.
We're an A-rated company helping people clean up their mess with the IRS.
If you owe $10,000 or more, then call the Tax Admiral.
Call 800-287-7180. Again, that's 800-287-7180. 800-287-7180.
Today, more than ever, it's imperative that you protect your digital privacy. EDEC Digital Forensics Signal Blocking Anti-Radiation Anti-Surveillance Faraday Bags shield the contents of your phones, tablets, and key fobs from 4G, Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, NFC, and more. Find us at edecdf.com/radio or call us now at 805-222-4584. That's 805-222-4584. Radio listeners get 20% off your order.
Are you worried about your mom or dad living alone in their house? Hi, I'm Joan London. Listen, I know how difficult it is to find senior care for someone you love. That's why I recommend a free service called A Place for Mom. They are the nation's largest senior living referral service. Call A Place for Mom today.
To receive free information on senior living communities in your area, call A Place for Mom at 1-800-704-6182.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice from local advisors and a personalized list of senior living communities you can visit. If you have questions about senior care for your mom or dad, there's a place for answers, A Place for Mom.
Call A Place for Mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care as well as free information on senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-704-6182. That's 1-800-704-6182.
Are your Google search results killing you? Unflattering content in blogs, news articles, online reviews, social media, or other sources can jeopardize your reputation, your business, and your livelihood. Let Reputation.com help. Our patented technology will make the truth about you more visible while pushing down unwanted negative content. Improve your Google search results. Call Reputation.com at 1-800-831-0771 for a free consultation. That's 800-831-0771.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we have Eric Ouellet, the author of Illuminations. Chris, you want to finish that comment before we go on?
Yeah, we were going to dive into looking at haunting events and I think more specifically poltergeist events. And we're going to look at how the onset of events, there's a bell curve that seems to take place, which is eerily reminiscent, pardon the pun, of how UFO waves tend to begin, come to a peak or a crescendo and then fade away or start to fade away, for lack of a better word.
Yes, absolutely. I owe a lot to a parapsychologist in Germany. His name is Walter von Lukadu, who studied poltergeists for many, many years. And he actually is both a psychologist and a physicist, and he's running a clinic in Germany to study poltergeists. What he noted over the years is that there's always the same kind of bell curve, as you say, happening. At first, there's a surprise. People see strange things, but they're not really sure what's going on in their house. Things seem to move, or the kids say there's something happening. So they're not sure really what's going on. But then the phenomena starts to get bigger and bigger, and then way more obvious and ostentatious. And that usually at that point, they had a chance to talk to their neighbors and other people. And eventually what von Lucadou calls the naive observers, so the believers in spirits and ghosts and all this, arrives on the scene, try to help the family, quote unquote. And then they start to inject all kinds of paranormal explanations based on non-human entities involved in the house. And at that point, usually the anomaly becomes way bigger. There's now things are moving by themselves very often. There's big noise in the house that cannot be explained, and so on. And then as the story gets known, then the more critical observers arrive on the scene. Sometimes university professors, others some more skeptics, and they start to ask more stringent questions. They start to observe things in a more skeptical way. And then usually at that time is where the intensity of the phenomena drops sharply. There's way less noise, there's way less moving things. And that's also at the time that some observation of cheating or hoaxing or catch, that person that seems to be at the center of all this, we think that maybe starts to like the attention he or she's getting. And then because the phenomena was declining, try to compensate with hoaxing. And then eventually the last part is when the society in general or the authorities or the social services gets involved. And then they declare this is all a hoax and it's all just a normal family issues. And they put the lid over it, and that's the end. There's no more events going on. What is powerful about his approach is that people, or the different kind of people involved, influence, I would say, the intensity of the belief that this is some sort of entity that is behind it, or influence the reverse belief that there's nothing abnormal going on. And it seems to be that this psychical energy of all those people believing and then being overrun by the non-believer, that seems to be what dictates the intensity of the phenomena. And like you mentioned, I've seen that same kind of scenario in a number of UFO waves.
Specifically, which UFO waves has this similarity been observed?
In the book, I'm looking at two major UFO waves, the Washington, D.C. 1952 and the Belgian UFO wave of 1989-1991. And then I use the same model for, I would not call it a wave, but the Rendlesham UFO incident of 1980. There's all kinds of similar types of patterns that can be seen once we pay close attention to the unfolding of events.
Specifically Rendlesham, we've discussed that quite a few times here.
Yes, well, the thing is that in Rendlesham, we have a very similar situation where you have the first people, the first night, who see something, and then, very weird, they make a report on it, but they're not really sure what's going on. And then another night where one of the commanders, which have shown that, at least after the fact, has some sort of interest in UFOs, perceived as alien spacecraft, goes in the field and then really start to look for evidence of something physical. So the phenomena becomes even more intense in the sky, according to the reports anyway. And then at the point where the base commander, the top guy, gets involved with his staff, and then they start to look in the sky and they don't see anything. And they're very skeptical. And the interviews we have many years later after shows that that person was skeptical from day one. And that's where the phenomena start to go away quickly. And then there's an investigation that's done by the British Ministry of Defense declaring that nonsense. And so this thing disappears. So we have the same kind of curves, even though it's on a much smaller scale if you compare it to a UFO wave.
It almost sounds like the more skeptical you are, the more likely you are to chase the phenomenon away.
Well, actually, this is a key observation from parapsychology. They call it the sheep-goat effect. They noticed that researchers who are pro-parapsychology tend to have better results than statistical chance. Researchers that do the same experiment who are very skeptical, they tend to have results that are lower than statistical result they should get normally. So it's one of the key idea. And there's some people talk about the psi, so this mental energy that creates this phenomena, and anti-psi. So there seems to be in conflicts, and the anti-psi in the end always win, and so the phenomena disappears.
How about the subconscious or unconscious role in producing psi effects? You point out that people who are more intuitive, like artists and musicians, tend to be more in touch with their unconscious thoughts and feelings, and they tend to score higher on ESP tests, for instance. You said likewise psi tends to be more frequent when people are in an altered state of consciousness. You put temporarily absent-minded, half asleep, hypnotized, in a trance, or I would add, for the abduction phenomenon, in a hypnagogic state. Let's discuss the role of the unconscious or subconscious in the individual first of all, and then we'll look at it in the collective unconscious.
Okay. Well, it's one of the key ideas in parapsychology that those phenomena, the psi phenomena, are somehow linked to unconscious processes, something very deep in the human mind. When there are conflicts in the human mind, and those conflicts cannot be expressed in some occasions, then the mind finds a way to influence the environment outside and communicate those conflicts. That's how poltergeists are explained. That says a person in state of distress, but cannot speak for all kinds of social reason to the rest of the family. And there's so much accumulation of frustration that are, but yet not expressed, that in some occasions, then it will take the root of a psychokinesis, a kinetic effect, and things will start to move and break down. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the realm of the unconscious is really the realm of the symbolic. When we have dreams at night, for instance, coming from the unconscious mind, the meaning of those dreams is very, very symbolic, and that's why it's so oftentimes very hard to interpret. But so the message we get from the unconscious that may become telepathic or premonitions, or in the case of psychokinesis, moving things, they tend to have a symbolic meaning that's hard to decipher, but they are meaningful. So the unconscious plays a key role in all this. How exactly, we don't know, but we know that psi effects usually have also a symbolic meaning, one sort or another. And it could be as simple as, you have a warning, so you have a premonition that something wrong is about to happen. But because the unconscious speaks in symbols and in feelings, you will not get the details of it. But in a dream, you may get a symbol that's used to show danger, somebody you don't like, for instance, visiting you. It's not that person will ever visit you, but there's something dangerous coming your way, so you better watch out. So that's the unconscious plays like that. And so because of that, when people see anomalies, and anomalies that we cause by psi, they inject symbols that are meaningful to them. So in the 20th century, they will see, in 21st century, they will be seeing aliens from outer space, but 100 years ago, there would be just an inventor of an airship. And 200 years ago, it would be the ghost driver of a coach, and so on.
Let's do our break here, folks. And then we've got more to come with Gene and Chris and Eric Ouellet. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids, and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Average weight lost in a study was 8.3 pounds to 4.2 inches total in first month. Results vary. Call to cancel within 14 days and return remaining non-frozen food for a refund less return shipping. Free shakes with first order only.
All right, guys. The holidays are over, and we have got some weight to lose. Let's do this. It's going to take pizza, some pasta, some chicken parm. Great foods. All part of the awesome new Turbo 10 program from Nutrisystem. You'll love it. Money back guaranteed. Lose up to 10 pounds and 5 inches in your first month. Look, you keep putting it off, you'll keep putting it on. So call Nutrisystem today and get 4 weeks of delicious meals and 1 week of Nutrisystem's new Turbo Shakes free. Packed with protein plus probiotics to help support digestive health and bust that gut. You'll also get a week of Nutri-Crush Shakes to crush hunger free. Come on, lose up to 10 pounds and 5 inches in your first month. Call 866-987-THIN. 866-987-THIN. Make the call. 866-987-THIN.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We'd like to remind you we have a second radio show called After the Paracast, and we present it only for those of you who subscribe to the Paracast Plus. To learn more, check out plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. We also offer the ad-free version of this show, higher quality audio, videos coming, show transcripts, and a lot more for modest fees. Check it out, plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. With Gene and Chris, we're talking to Eric Ouellet. The book is called Illuminations. Chris?
Eric, you were starting to talk about how, and this is something that's been pointed out before. Jacques Vallée, I think most notably, pointed out that these paranormal-esque type of phenomenon tend to mimic the technology of the times, and that would be a real, I think, good piece of evidence to suggest that what we're looking at is there's some sort of unconscious social element at work here. Words used to describe events back in ancient times were couched in the vernacular of the times. And as you pointed out, in the 21st century, now we have high-tech objects seemingly flitting about our airspace. Another thing that you point out, too, in hauntings is that the older the haunting, older hauntings tend to exhibit manifestations within a fairly static environment. In other words, in particular places, the history of the place tends to almost it seemingly perpetuate the types of effects that are seen. A good example that you don't point out, but I remember, is the shriek of a banshee means the death in the O'Connell, O'Brien, Kavanaugh, and I think a couple of other families, but only in those families. You know, when you hear the banshee wail, if you're an O'Brien like me, you better watch your back. Why don't you explain how that could be possible and what the implications are?
Okay, there's a parapsychologist who studied a little bit these things. His name is Nandor Fodor, who talked about the Gestalt, is the word he uses, a fancy word, of families. That somehow, because people talk in family and from generation to generations, ideas, concepts, perceptions are communicated, but also the beliefs that comes with it. And so, if in a family the belief of something chasing them, let's say, is well entrenched and is passed from one generation to another, then if there are psi effect created by the unconscious mind, that conscious mind will go and seek out from sources that are in your mind. And so if this belief that there are some forces are chasing, especially your family, and that belief is strong from one generation to the next, then definitely the probabilities that across time, the same kind of anomalies will show up in a particular family, because people share that from one generation to the next.
Well, that dovetails nicely into the whole idea of social psi effects, and the Fedor description is a good one. But there have been actually some parapsychological experiments that were undertaken in the 60s and 70s that really, I think, were dramatically able to show how this particular, as you put it, I think, impersonal effects can be manifested by a group of people. Let's talk about the Sparrow experiments, and also Kenneth Batchelder, who conducted a similar experiment.
Yes, there's been experiments with groups of people. One of them is called the Philip experiment, done in the early 70s, where a group of people voluntarily decided to create an artificial ghost. And so they use all kinds of techniques to try to get their unconscious free and liberated. And eventually they started to notice psychokinetic effects, mostly knocking on a table. And they were apparently able to lift the table on only one leg. So all the three other legs were lifting, and they were just touching gently the top of the table. So the thing is that one of the conclusion of these people is that there seems to be strength in people, also when it comes to psi effects. Another researchers, as you mentioned, Batchelder, did seance with groups, so like they were doing in the 19th century, but he took a different approach, tried again to get people to relax, to have a good time, but also ultimately to liberate their unconscious, so to go and be free, and believing they can actually do things and affect the reality around them. And they were actually able to have an influence on lightnings, like the lights in the building where they were, almost at will, or they were very often able to do it, which shows again that there seems to be some strengths in number, which leads me then to think that might be if we have 1 million people having the same unconscious challenges or worries, or and they cannot really express it because they don't know what's going to happen. Well, maybe we have a situation where there's a lot of psi energy available for a big scale anomaly to occur. That's one of the key ideas I'm proposing in the book.
Yeah, and that's an important one, because if this can dovetail into the unconscious mind of a group, then, all bets are off. I mean, anything's possible in that scenario. And of course, Dean Radin is famous for establishing scientifically that the human body responds to stimuli before the stimuli arrives in many cases. And that in itself, I think that time dilation idea could possibly be applied to, times of social upheaval, people being in a state of uncertainty and possibly in a state of fear, and how collectively this could manifest itself in a variety of ways that would appear anomalous to them because they're consciously not aware of it. Now, you discuss these experiments. Those were almost ritualistic in a way, in that the participants were conscious and attempting to elicit some sort of group effects, if you will. But let's talk about continue talking about the unconscious potential for manifestation of inexplicable events.
Yeah, well, this idea of the social psi, or the socially shared unconscious. The thing is that I have no hard proof, but I see a lot of correlations or circumstantial evidence linked to UFO waves in this regard. One of them is the famous UFO wave of 1954 in France. It was mostly in France, not all in France, but mostly. The peak of that event occurred also at the very same time where back in Algeria, which was a French colony, insurgents were actually decided to launch a long-lasting insurgency against France. Nobody really knew about this in 1954, but it's interesting to know that these two events coincided at the same time. It's as if, and for our American listeners, the war in Algeria for France was a catastrophe, of epic proportion. There was over 1 million European living in Algeria, And when the French government gave the independence to the country, they had to leave right away and move to France. Otherwise, they would have been lynched by the Algerian. It left scars in the society. I mean, it was as bad as Vietnam. And yet, so that event, those two events, the peak of the UFO wave and the formation of the insurgent groups, coincide at the exact same time. And so that tells me that maybe collectively somehow there is this unconscious feeling of premonition that was something bad really was happening, but people could not know what it was again, and that the language of the unconscious that is so symbolic was the language of using perceptions of objects in the sky, whether they were real or not. That's probably a mix of all kinds of things. But that's an example that the social unconscious somehow warned us of something upcoming, but like in most situations, very hard to decipher.
Let's decipher this, folks. You have Gene and Chris. More to come with Eric Ouellet. You're in the Paracast. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
For over 5 years, you've been hearing about the Berkey guy, so you may know a few things about him. For example, you are well aware of the superior quality and effectiveness of Berkey water filters and accessories. But did you know the Berkeys have had independent lab tests done to prove just how effective they are? It's true, and he can email you the test results. Just visit goberkey.com. You may also know that the Berkey guy has helped tens of thousands of people get better prepared. Now here's something you may not know. GoBerkey.com has amazing specials and deals all the time on a wide variety of survival and preparedness products, most ready to ship same day. Visit the Berkey Guy at GoBerkey.com and be sure to click the red Products on Sale Now button. You can always call toll-free 877-886-3653. Again, that's 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com, home of the Berkey Guy.
Today, more than ever, it's imperative that you protect your digital privacy. EDEC Digital Forensics Signal Blocking Anti-Radiation Anti-Surveillance Faraday Bags shield the contents of your phones, tablets, and key fobs from 4G, Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, NFC, and more. Find us at edecdf.com/radio or call us now at 805-222-4584. That's 805-222-4584. Radio listeners get 20% off your order.
This is a healthcare alert from the Pain Relief Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee, back, shoulder, or ankle pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You don't have to suffer any longer. You can immediately qualify for a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost to you by calling our 24/7 Pain Relief Hotline at 866-389-0620. Delivery is free and all paperwork is handled for you. If you are on Medicare and have knee, back, shoulder, or ankle pain, don't wait. You can qualify to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost by calling our 24/7 Pain Hotline now at 866-389-0620. Our representatives are standing by 24/7 to take your call and rush you your pain-relieving brace at little or no cost to you. Shipping is free and all paperwork is handled for you. Just call 866-389-0620. That's 866-389-0620. Again, 866-389-0620.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pulaski of the Pulaski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states.
Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Eric Ouellet joining us, author of Illuminations. Chris?
Okay, Eric, continue. I think this is a good example that you were referring to before. How does this dovetail into, where's the connecting point between, let's say, a focus person in a poltergeist case and trying to identify where a focus person is located in a UFO wave, for instance? Do you think it was a collective, as you were mentioning the Algerian uprising, and then the corresponding straight line mystery, I think, as Amy Michelle famously coined it in his book, which I, again, highly recommend. UFOs and the Straight Line Mystery is a seminal work. It's hard to find, but if you find a copy, grab it. Continue your sort of correlation between the two events, and then give us other examples. I think the Washington wave would be a possible example that had the same kind of social unease surrounding, I think, the McCarthy hearings and the rise of Russia as a superpower and a nuclear adversary and that sort of thing.
Yes, the example of the 1952 UFO wave over Washington D.C. has the same kind of bell curve that Von Luquedu described. The first weekend that they saw something. So people were surprised. The controllers didn't know what to make of it, but we didn't know what it was. But it started kind of gently. And then the second weekend, now the press was there, and all the sensationalist people interested in talking about aliens from outer space were involved at that point, so the naive observers. And the UFO gave a pretty good show that second weekend. Air Force sent jets. They could not catch anything. They couldn't see anything, and yet they were on radars. And then next step was the arrival of the Blue Book people and other defense officials saying, no, this is, you're wrong. This is all kinds of thermal inversion and other things, which are probably in many instances correct, but not in all of them. And then, so the UFO wave that was going on in the U.S. at the time and over Washington in general started to decline at that point. And then we had the commission, the Robertson Commission, that tried to put a lid on this. Like we, the U.S. military, are tired of getting civilian reports about all these things. So we need to do something about it because we have other more important things to do. So that's the bell curve. But if we look at it more carefully, the peak of the 2 weekends, the peak happened the same time as the Democratic Convention that was going on in Chicago. There was a time of McCarthyism. It was almost at its height. And of course, Washington, D.C. is the land of civil servants, federal civil servants, who were the main targets of McCarthy, who was seeing communists everywhere. So you have a group of people that were oppressed by the situation, and yet, because they're civil servants, they cannot speak publicly about what's going on, so they were kind of muted. So very similar to a person that is in a classic poltergeist, psychological trauma and yet unable to speak. Interestingly, because it happened the same time as the Democratic Convention, and because it got the military involved, it's interesting to note that the ones who were fighting McCarthy were the Democrats at the time. And eventually, 2 years later, is the military that stood up firm to McCarthy and put an end to his witch hunt. So it's interesting that, again, we have the key ingredients that are quite similar to the ones what would happen in a classic family poltergeist.
Well, you also have concurrent sightings around military installations, as you point out, in South Korea, Okinawa, Greenland, Newfoundland, West Germany. I think this is during the time period where Gordon Cooper chased after UFOs in a fighter jet while he was in the Air Force. So this is something that I wasn't aware of, that the U.S. military installations in the before-mentioned countries also had sightings. Explain the connection there, because you don't have your geographic sort of proximity to the potential social angst, collective social unconscious angst or fear or uncertainty. What would explain these upwelling of reports in such far-flung places?
I think in the case of it's what we would call a reporting effect. We have to remember that in the early 50s, and actually still true today, by the way, the ones who have real good quality radars, it's always the military. Their radars are superior to civilian radars, and it's always true. So that's one thing, that they would be the first to see it anyway, if it's on radar. The second aspect to it is that because, it was the middle of the Cold War, they were watching the sky way more, even if just with binoculars and sensitive installations, because they were quite worried of a sneak Soviet attack. So again, if someone reports something in the sky, it's because they were looking more. So that's another aspect. The last aspect is that in the early 50s, the U.S. military was not too sure what to make of UFOs. Still, they were pretty sure there was nothing to it, but they were still wondering. And so they were having a reporting system to see what's going on. And so we have a lot of data because they were actually compiling them. But that doesn't mean that the phenomena was necessarily more intensely focusing on the military if we look outside Washington. I think it's maybe a reporting effect.
Well, another example that kind of springs to mind that you don't mention in the book is the Swedish and ghost rockets of 1947. Of course, you have your elements of rockets, which instilled fear in nations that were at the end of the trajectory. You have the uncertainty of Russia becoming now a much bigger superpower than they were prior to World War II. And then you have the symbol of the rocket, which people equated to the V2 rocket, obviously, which devastated parts of London. So we have those same sort of social kind of unease, I guess, fear, uncertainty. How much of that ghost rocket phenomenon do you feel was, possibly psychological in nature versus, potential hardware?
It's an interesting case. The thing is that in 1946 and 7, there were still no rockets that could be going that far from the Soviet-held territory in Eastern Europe. So that's why a lot of people are saying that nothing happened. Maybe there was something else. Maybe they were Earthlights, or I don't know. But what is interesting is, as you mentioned, is that people saw and interpreted what they saw as being rockets, even though they were not understanding that technology was not that advanced at that time. But they were certainly well aware of what happened during the bombing of London with the V2. So yes, absolutely. People draw images and knowledge based on what they know, and then they project it to things. But Sweden was in a very tough position at the time. And interestingly, that's around the same time where the Swedish government was seriously thinking about launching its own nuclear research program, which they started, but then given the costs involved, they stopped.
Okay, we have Eric Ouellet and Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
This is Dan Pillett. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX or my website, danpilla.com.
We use mobile devices right against our bodies every day, but growing scientific evidence has emerged showing serious health risks associated with exposure to EMF radiation emitted from these devices. The solution is Defender Shield, the most effective mobile radiation shielding ever developed. Defender Shield blocks virtually 100% of EMF radiation from cell phones, tablets, and laptops, and starts at just $64.99. Buy now at DefenderShield.com. For 10% off, use promo code GCN. DefenderShield.com, the worldwide leader in mobile radiation shielding.
Are you worried about your mom or dad living alone in their house? Hi, I'm Joan London. Listen, I know how difficult it is to find senior care for someone you love. That's why I recommend a free service called A Place for Mom. They are the nation's largest senior living referral service. Call A Place for Mom today.
To receive free information on senior living communities in your area, call A Place for Mom at 1-800-704-6182.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice from local advisors and a personalized list of senior living communities you can visit. If you have questions about senior care for your mom or dad, there's a place for answers, A Place for Mom.
Call A Place for Mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care as well as free information on senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-704-6182. That's 1-800-704-6182.
Most of you know that heart disease is the #1 silent killer in the U.S. What if I told you for just $54.95 a month you could fight against heart disease naturally? At Heart and Body Extract, we've been helping thousands of people get back to a healthier heart. Don't just take my word for it. Check out all of the success stories at hbextract.com. Or to order, call 866-295-5305. That's 866-295-5305. hbextract.com. Don't risk it when you can take charge of it.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a Select Quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Linda just called. Her husband, Ray, has a $300,000 group life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him. Well, I impartially shopped the highly rated term life insurance companies we represent and found Ray, who is 41 and takes medication to control his cholesterol, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $26 a month. That's almost twice the coverage for less than half of what he had paid. If SelectQuote hasn't shopped for your life insurance, you're probably paying too much.
For your free quote, call 1-800-403-4885. That's 1-800-403-4885. 1-800-403-4885. Or go to SelectQuote.com. We shop, you save. Get full details on the example policy at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Your price could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
Greetings, Phenomenal Ones. This is Dr. Jeremiah C. Hackley of Phenomenal Center. I want to invite you to the Phenomenal Health and Healing Conference in the city of Knoxville, February the 7th and the 8th. We have coming Dr. Joel Ouelett. He is a 2-time Nobel Prize nominee, the Humanitarian Award winner for Natural Medicine, featured at the United Nations, and have 75 peer reviews published in health journals. Dr. Ouelett has an answer for you. Call us right now. We only have 100 seats. 865-851-7269. Health is not a matter of chance, but it is a matter of choice. Call us right now. 865-851-7269.
Hi, this is James Fox from Chasing UFOs. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
So Eric Ouellet is telling us about Sweden considering their own nuclear program. Tell me more.
Well, Sweden, they faced a situation that they wanted to remain neutral, and they did not want to be involved in the Cold War. And definitely the nuclear weapons was becoming the game changer in all this. The actual work started later in the 50s and it stopped some in the early 60s in their nuclear program. But it shows the level of worries they had, that they felt at the time that the only way to protect themselves is to be a nuclear power. I mean, a small one, but still a nuclear power. It shows at least that this level of anxiety that was lived at the time by people in that part of the world.
I think we just had a ghost rocket fly by. We've been discussing UFO waves and also how they correlate to some haunting cases and there seems to be a bell curve. Let's discuss that bell curve in a little bit more detail. Phase 1, as you describe it, is surprise. Phase 2 is displacement. Phase 3 is decline. And then phase 4 is suppression. And that accurately reflects a bell curve on a graph. Let's look at these quickly one by one and show how they're integral in continuing that bell curve through its entire cycle. Phase 1, surprise.
Yeah, the surprise is that most paranormal events, and so I'll take a number of them, but ghost huntings, poltergeists, and I would say UFO waves, they start very gently, and there's a few sightings here and there, and then it starts to build up a little bit bigger. What happened at that time is that there are key people who see these things, and they are witness of that, but they don't really know what it is. So again, at that point, unconsciously, they may feel there's something paranormal about it or weird, but they don't really know what it is. And that's the time where it's still not a major event. And again, the theory is that this is the unconscious strengths of the people that will determine the intensity of the phenomena. At the surprise phase, at least in the classic poltergeist case, the focus person, the person that seems to be around the phenomena, is also not too sure what's going on. The family around the person is not sure if the individual in question is involved. So there's a lot of unknown, and that's the UFO wave. If you think another example from the book is the Belgian UFO wave. In the first few weeks or the first few days, they don't know what's going on. I'm not sure what's going on, but it seems to be something weird. So that's the surprise phase. If we move to the next phase, that's really where there are people who come along that are true believers in either ghosts or spirit causing poltergeists or ETH. So they do truly believe that UFOs are caused by aliens from outer space, and they put a lot of inject into what people think. In a classic poltergeist case, you will have the ghost hunters or the house clearing people will come, and actually by their very presence, they actually confirm the beliefs of the people who live in the house that there is an evil spirit in their house, which actually just reinforce the intensity of the belief. And guess what? The intensity of the phenomenon is also increasing. And same thing we have with UFO is that when you have the ETH ufologists, especially the not so sophisticated ones arriving on the scene, they are just pushing this idea further that, aliens are coming. And then a lot of people start to interpret things around them that way. And usually in a UFO wave, then the phenomena start to intensify itself. There's way more sightings, and the sightings becoming more and more exotic in nature. Again, the Belgian UFO wave, there is a key organization that was involved, the SOBEP. First-class ufologists, by the way. They're very level-headed people, and they did a very good job in gathering data. So I have to give them kudos. They're 100%. However, they were believers in ETH. And so as they come to get the cases and do press conferences, they project that idea that indeed there is some visitors. They focus a lot on the triangular types of object, even though there was only 50% of observations that were about triangular objects. But they created that mood, that intensity, that there's something real going on. And then, of course, you have the intensity going up. Then the phase of decline is really the one, because as events gets known, that there are people much more skeptical coming along. In the classic poltergeist, you will... it could be just police officers, or it could be parapsychologists, but they start to ask questions, a lot of questions. How many witnesses? What do you really saw? Can I check and be there to see things? And that's where it starts to decline, because these people, we think, are by their very attitude, removes the belief that this is actually what's going on. And then the phenomenon declines at that point. And then here, in the case of UFOs, interestingly, if you compare Washington, 1952, the military authorities and government authorities were really sending that signal. There's nothing going on. In Belgium...
Excuse me, is that why we had these spectacular sightings early on, but it doesn't seem as if the UFO events of the present day are anywhere near as elaborate?
True. That's a good question. Some people are talking about the decline in UFOs because maybe there's a decline in interest and beliefs in UFOs.
No, the aliens went home.
That's another explanation. Unfortunately, we should ask them if it's true. And so far, no answer.
Yeah, all you abductees out there, please, next time you get taken aboard, ask your abductors how many of them are still around and how come there doesn't seem to be as many.
Yeah, no, and it's a very good point you're making because over time, I would say the principal anomalistic phenomena changes with. So 100 years ago, it was the medium in a seance. 100 years before was the ghost, the classic ghost. It has been UFOs for part of the 20th century. And for the 21st century, we may have another dominant paranormal phenomena that would be completely different. I don't know.
Yeah, be Dick Cheney cloned and being seen in simultaneous places all over the world. In like the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, these giant Dick Cheneys, rampaging through cities like Godzilla.
Maybe. I don't think it would be that ostentatious, though.
I'm trying to lighten up the mood here just a hair.
Okay, so what is the event of the 21st century? So far, it's still UFOs.
Yeah. Let's do some conjecturing here. What would be a good what-if scenario that could show how this whole sort of psychosocial manifested phenomena could be progressing forward in time? What would be a good one for the 21st century? Some sort of disease, plague, that sort of thing, or AI, of course, computers, robots taking over.
Well, I think that the object we should look at is what makes people concerned. Is there some tensions in the world that concerns a vast majority of the population or a good chunk of it on an ongoing basis? I mean, the Cold War and the UFO, the match is almost perfect. But now we are in post-Cold War world. People are worried about terrorism to some degree. They are worried about the environment to another degree. It's hard to say.
Let's explain this further in our next segment. With Gene and Chris and Eric Ouellet, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
By now you know that wireless technology like cell phones do in fact pose dangers to the health and privacy of everyone. Block-It Pocket's wide range of products are unmatched in providing the protection you deserve. No scare tactics, just common sense. BlockItPocket.com offers quality American-made options to alleviate and eliminate these invisible dangers. Learn more at BlockItPocket.com or call 888-315-9618. BlockItPocket.com, enhancing health and privacy.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS?
Get on board with the Tax Admiral. Don't pick on the IRS alone. I'll cut penalties and reduce your overall tax bill. Sometimes I can even get it zeroed out completely.
We're an A-rated company helping people clean up their mess with the IRS.
If you owe $10,000 or more, then call the Tax Admiral.
Call 800-287-7180. Again, that's 800-287-7180. 800-287-7180.
So you've got to take a state construction license exam or certification. Can't decide on what books or what chapters to study? Discover right now how you can eliminate unnecessary books and wasted study time. At contractorexam.com, our study materials zero in on state-required test topics in an effective, multiple-choice format. So whether you're a plumber, electrician, general contractor, or other construction-related trade, contractorexam.com will help get you prepared. Visit us at www.contractorexam.com today.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Are your Google search results killing you? Unflattering content in blogs, news articles, online reviews, social media, or other sources can jeopardize your reputation, your business, and your livelihood. Let Reputation.com help. Our patented technology will make the truth about you more visible while pushing down unwanted negative content. Improve your Google search results. Call Reputation.com at 1-800-831-0771 for a free consultation. That's 800-831-0771.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Okay, so what is the next phenomenon? Zombies? Oh, yes, zombies are taking over.
I don't think there's any, maybe I'm ignorant because I didn't really study that in depth, but I don't think there is real reports of zombie attacks. Am I wrong?
Yeah, just go to Vegas or just walk around any American city, and you'll see a lot of zombies walking around in a state of waking coma, no question about it.
Well, those are the people who watch certain cable TV networks.
Okay, yeah, there might be some fashions of people taking some habits of doing certain things, but I probably not see it as terribly paranormal.
Exactly.
However, there is something along those lines that I've heard from a number of sources, but it's still early days of this. Some people talk about shadow people, which is a variation of the concept of a ghost.
Yeah,
but
black-eyed children.
Yeah, and that's something that people see in the corner of their eye, so it's really open to all kinds of interpretation. But what makes it, I would say, maybe the next one is that it seems to be becoming a shared way of describing events. So there seems to be a lot of countries, a lot of cities where people have these reports, probably because before they didn't pay any attention to that because there's some natural in biological aspects to it. But as it becomes part of a new belief that they might be shadow people, then they might, again, the unconscious might actually use that as a vehicle to project some psi effects. And then the shadow people will be a little bit more real in the sense that the unconscious is more actively engaged in using that for communicating.
Well, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do think that we're seeing a what appears to be a decline in alleged reports or alleged encounters with, especially with aliens. The abduction phenomenon seems to be, fading out a little bit. We may be in the decline stage in that regard. We're also seeing that UFOs are tending to stay further away from witnesses. You have less close proximity cases now, as opposed to in the 70s, 80s, 90s would be the last real period when a fairly dramatic number of close encounter cases were reported. Why do you think that is? Well, why do you think UFOs are staying further away? Because our increased level of technology is maybe putting them at risk of being detected and possibly identified? Or is it that they just don't need to get close anymore? They've, gained all the information they need in this symbiotic relationship with the culture. And now they're just out there to, dance around and entertain us and give grist for the internet or something.
There's two lines of explanations I think we can look at, and that they're not mutually exclusive. One of them is, like you mentioned, is that there's more knowledge and understanding of what's going on in the sky. I mean, in 1950s, to see jetliners was something fairly new for a lot of people. Today, it's some totally mundane events. I mean, people see jetliners in the sky all the time. So maybe there's more awareness of what is a natural event or human-made event compared to the past. So because of that, then there's less interpretation linked to UFO as spacecraft from another world. That's one portion of it. The other one, I think this one is maybe more controversial, but I will say it. I think that ufologists, especially in the 1980s and 90s, were really, personally, I find it was an era completely delusional, people coming up with completely unfounded facts, unproven anything, and yet making big statements about aliens invading the earth and huge, gigantic conspiracies. And this actually, I think, had an effect, is that the population in general got just sick of it. And the whole conspiracy/alien perspective declined very significantly in people's consciousness, because it seems to be, they reach a level of absurdity so great that people gave up and lost interest.
I kind of have to disagree somewhat. I think we're seeing more and more people diving deeper and deeper into delusion. I think there's millions of people out there that have been affected very deeply on a subconscious level into believing that aliens, Lyrians, Dracos, Zeta Reticulans, I mean, these terms are bounced around on the internet, and millions of people are buying into this stuff. People like David Wilcock and this new guy, Corey Goode. Oh, yeah, I've been to Mars. Yeah, there's intergalactic war going on. This stuff is being taken at face value by a lot of people, whereas back in the 80s and 90s, people were a lot more, I think, circumspect and just more dubious. And I see the opposite going on. I really think that there's a subculture growing that is actually almost viewing these fantastical, delusional claims in a quasi-religious sense. I almost see it as religious belief, that people have suspended their disbelief and believe they're eating the body and blood of an alien as opposed to the Christian Mass or the Catholic Mass.
If we watch the TV show Supergirl, they have a character called the Martian Manhunter. So you see, we therefore have Martians, but that's, of course, based on the comic books.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm talking about the population in general. I agree with you. There is a minority that's probably getting even deeper, and that's not the word hypothesis in ETH is not warranted. It should be a pure belief system. Oh, this is there for sure, but one of the indicators would be the success of the second series of X-Files. I mean, it was very successful in the 1990s because it was touching a chord. If the show fails now, like 20 years later, I think it will be, failing in the sense of not being as popular as it was, might be an indicator that, yeah, people moved on from those things. I mean, the majority of the population. So that's what I mean here.
Well, understand also that fewer people watch network TV anymore. So you could have half the ratings and still be successful. The first 3 episodes were relatively successful.
Yes, again, like I said, it's controversial what I'm saying. There's measures of success, but the issue is how these conspiracy theories in general, and the population in general, have, I would say, a level of acceptance now compared to then. I think it's less now than then, but I could be wrong.
Well, the overarching theory now in X-Files is that it's not E.T. who's involved, but the government using alien technology to engage in its stuff.
Yes, and the people who make those shows, they make it to sell, right? So they have a good pulse of what people are looking for. And that, I think, that actually speaks volume of my controversial theory here.
Another thing I want to point out also is that kids that have been growing up in the last 20 years, for instance, 25 years, have been, totally saturated by the concept of aliens coming here from another planet. And it's almost like part of their reality. It's almost part of the belief system that's sort of built in. They almost accepted it at face value without even really thinking about it or without it really moving them in any direction, negative or positive. Yes, the average 15 or 20-year-old, what do you think UFOs are? And they all think it's aliens. I think the media in general has indoctrinated people into believing in the ETH. I think that may be by design on some level, whether it's conscious or unconscious, on part of the powers that be, who control the media, who control, the actual dissemination of propaganda and culture. I think in some part it may be to hide secret technology, that there's a good chance that this is very convenient to, create a sort of an atmosphere of plausible deniability by the government. And so I think it's almost become accepted as opposed to being rejected, at least in this country. I think it's a lot more commonplace in terms of people's thinking, that these things are real and that the ETH is obviously the most popular theory behind to explain it.
I'm not sure about that. I agree with you that the view that UFOs are considered a spaceship from another world is a very wide distributed views. But what I'm talking about here is that people paying really attention to that, much less, I think.
We have Eric Ouelett. The book is called Illuminations. That's not E.T. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
As you know, neighbors, web hosting can be pretty cheap, but not all hosting is the same. DreamHost wins Best of Awards year after year. You get unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and even the low-cost plans put your sites on high-performance SSDs. Want to know more about what DreamHost has to offer? Go to technightowl.com/host. Once again, that's technightowl.com/host.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Eric Ouellet, you were going to explain something further, please.
Yes, just the example we're talking about, when people ask, do you believe in UFO? I have a lot of fun because I always ask them, what do you mean? And then I get the blank stare and say, okay, I'll help you with this. Do I believe that strange objects in the skies are UFO, are spaceships? And then the answer is no. And then do you ask me, do I believe there are anomalies in the sky? I also say no, because I know there are reported anomalies. It's not a matter of belief. So yes, I agree with you that this notion that the association between UFO and ETs is a common view, but that doesn't mean people pay much attention to it, which is kind of strange. But if we look at the unconscious level, I don't think that has reached to the same depth that it used to be 20 years ago in a large segment of the population. That's my argument. I could be wrong, but I think it explains in part why we see less UFOs now.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to be too ethnocentric about this. Discussing this subject in the United States and in North America, let's say, you're going to have a different quality of conversation in South America, definitely a different quality of conversation in the Far East. But we're seeing, in my estimation, almost a coalescing together, a melding together of the impact of the sensationalism in the United States, for instance, in media coverage and Hollywood. That, I think, is having a measurable impact in how people in other very diverse cultures are experiencing the phenomenon. I'll give you an example. The alien gray image, which was ubiquitous, I think, to the United States for at least a decade or so before you even began to have any sort of reports of alien grays allegedly being seen or interacted with in other countries, South America, Europe, Russia. It took a while for that particular meme, if you will, to gain strength and be propagated to other ethnic groups in other parts of the world.
That's correct. And that's true for all kinds of other types of phenomena. I mean, if you compare Britain and France in terms of hauntings, I mean, the entire country of Great Britain is haunted. If you read some reports, in France is very, very rare that you will see something like that. So there's definitely a social and cultural components to that. If you think about going back to UFOs in the Middle East, it's very rare that you will get UFO sightings, but you will have all other types of things that we cannot even imagine.
Right, the jinn. One of my favorites.
The example here is during the revolution in Iran in 1979, there was people claiming to see the face of Ayatollah Khomeini in the clouds. Now, if you say that in North America, people say, okay, you need to check to the psych ward urgently. But over there, it was an acceptable perception. And maybe there are some side effects that, there were people who were sensing what was going on. I don't know. But definitely culture and society plays a big role in terms of what we see, what we perceive, and the type of anomalies that are reported, definitely.
Well, and the details, too. I think the details are filtered through a cultural bias, no question. We do have some questions here in our question bank where our listeners are able to post their questions that we then ask our guests here at the Paracast. So go to forum.theparacast.com, click on the question bank, and go ahead and post your questions for our guests. Now, we have a question here from Wade, which is a very good one. And Wade's been a long-time poster. He's just passed the 4,000 post mark, which is a bit of an accomplishment.
And that's only yesterday.
Well, no, he's not posted 196 posts since yesterday, but he's up there. He's a big fan of the show and a very astute observer. He's wondering, Eric, are there any UFO cases that it's tempting to consider as parapsychological in nature, but otherwise have left behind physical evidence in the way of tracks, unexplained markings, or, in the example of our farmer, a rather bland-tasting pancake? Or is it the tracks and pancakes are parapsychological?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Physical traces. There are cases that have them. The Delphos case, for instance, a fluorescing ring that lasted almost 20 hours.
Yes, there are a number of cases that leaves traces, but there are a lot of variations, right? So we have to be careful here. So there might be a number of explanations. One of them is simply that this earth light that move from one place to another, and then it brings some material from one place to another. So that's one thing. And
hold on a second. Wait a minute. An earth light being able to bring physical material?
Because it's plasma, and there's some dirt that comes with it, right? And then so if it pops up one place and then eventually pops away another place, it might bring a little bit of dust from another place. So that can explain some of those incidents.
I'll have to look into that and review my Paul Devereaux material because I have never heard that ever.
Well, it's like I'm saying, it's one possibility. One of the things that has been noted in poltergeist events is actually there are a number of reports where you have steps in the dirt or in the mud that appeared on their own. So that suggests that psychokinetics can actually be more precise than we think. So that's a possibility. Again, we don't have our proof here, but that's part of it. And then if we look at more holistically, probably the topmost expert in UFO physical traces, Ted Phillips. And over the years, he started to think that the paranormal explanation is actually the one that makes most sense. Fortunately, we're still waiting for his new book about this, so I cannot discuss.
Don't hold your breath.
But definitely, there's people thinking along those ways. Again, when we talk about marks on the ground, like just it could be again a form of plasma. I mean, there's some research been done by the British military, among others, that shows that balls of plasma can create those certain crop circles that are the more classic ones, not the very elaborate ones, which probably almost all of them are made by humans.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a number of explanations for a number of different types of physical traces, and some of them are definitely in the realm of the parapsychology.
Yeah. Well, when we come back from break, Eric, I want to get your take on some cryptozoological anomalies like Bigfoot and Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, and other lake monsters and that sort of thing. And we'll see if this parapsychological theory will if there's a way to explain those. Okay. Well, let's get into that real quick then before we go to break. Eric, what do you think of Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Wild Man, the Almasti? You can go down the line around the world of a very similar type wild man or large hairy hominid that's been seen for many, many years, generations, and tends to be cross-cultural. It doesn't have some sort of cultural, focus. It does tend to be all over the place. Also, little people. Every culture, every Indian culture in North America, for instance, has stories of little people. Obviously, the most notable are the Celtic countries, which have the idea of leprechauns, fairies, brownies, that sort of thing, trolls, goblins. And so when we get back, we'll go ahead and pick your brain on that one. And don't forget, we have some really good shows coming up here in the future. Phyllis Buttinger is going to be here, Whitley Strieber, and I'm going to hand it over to Gene.
We'll have special coverage also of the International UFO Congress. And I want to remind you, we have a second radio show for you to listen to. It's called After the Paracast. Exclusively available if you join the Paracast Plus. Go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Check out the low subscription rates. We also give you the ad-free version of this show for those who don't want the network ads. And show transcripts and more with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
If you're fascinated by UFOs, ancient aliens, archaeological mysteries, ghost hunting, Atlantis, and any other paranormal topic as we are, be sure to check out apmagazine.info each month. Since 1985, it has presented the latest research by top researchers like Andrew Collins, Brad Steiger, and many others, and contains interviews with such leading personalities as Jacques Vallée. Click on one of their banners and check out apmagazine.info. As you know, neighbors, web hosting can be pretty cheap, but not all hosting is the same. DreamHost wins Best of Awards year after year. You get unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and even the low-cost plans put your sites on high-performance SSDs. Want to know more about what DreamHost has to offer? Go to technightowl.com/host. Once again, that's technightowl.com/host.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS?
Get on board with the Tax Admiral. Don't take on the IRS alone. I'll cut penalties and reduce your overall tax bill. Sometimes I can even get it zeroed out completely.
We're an A-rated company helping people clean up their mess with the IRS.
If you owe $10,000 or more, then call the Tax Admiral.
Call 800-287-7180. Again, that's 800-287-7180. 800-287-7180.
As if chlorine in our water weren't bad enough, now they're adding ammonia?
It's true. Some municipalities are now adding ammonia plus chlorine to your water supply. It's a disinfectant called chloramine. But with a trusted Big Berkey water filter, you can keep chloramine out of your water. New NSF EPA certified lab tests show EPA Berkey water filters remove chloramines, pharmaceuticals, BPA, pesticides, bacteria and viruses, all forms of fluoride, and much more. Big Berkey water filters are the original and most trusted on the market. The gold standard in water purification. And our filters last for years at less than 2 cents per gallon. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get your Big Berkey today. Call 1-877-99-BERKEY or click BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. That's 1-877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
This is David Cordani, CEO of Cigna. For more than 20 years, Cigna has worked with the March of Dimes to address premature births in the U.S. Premature births cause horrible suffering and cost billions of dollars each year. That's why Cigna is committed to raising funds and awareness through our employees, family, and friends to improve the health of moms and babies. Please join us in supporting the March for Babies. Start your team today at marchforbabies.org.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So we're going through your questions at forum.theparacast.com in our question bank with Eric Ouelett, author of Illuminations. Chris?
So what do you think, Eric? I know your book is mainly geared towards looking at the UFO phenomenon and its sort of related sort of subcategories. But what do you think of the whole cryptozoological creature thing? Are we looking at flesh and blood creatures, or are they paraphysical in nature?
I'm not an expert on those, but from what I know, we have structurally, we have very similar situations. So we have witnesses from all places in groups alone that either see things or hear things, especially with Bigfoot. They're known to make big roars. And yet all the physical evidence we have is either fake or very inconclusive at best. So we're a very similar situation in that sense that there's no proof of what we're dealing with. And yet we have people keep reporting the same thing over and over. So could it be something parapsychological? I would think so, because if we think about Bigfoot and other types of similar creatures, I mean, this is the classic mythological man-beast or human-beast construct. This goes very deep in our unconscious, that these forces that we have, that we actually put into that kind of symbols. And then are there parts of the world where these kinds of forces or ideas are maybe more prone to be taken out of our unconscious? Maybe, I don't know. But definitely the structure of Bigfoots, if you look at people having apparitions more than anything else, is very similar to other types of paranormal phenomena. And yet there's no traces really that are trustworthy. So yes, I think there's a way to study these things from a parapsychological perspective. Absolutely.
Well, here's one that's particularly interesting to me, having written probably the only definitive book looking at this mystery, and that is the so-called unexplained livestock death phenomenon, popularly known as the cattle mutilation phenomenon. Here we have thousands of pounds of physical evidence, thousands of reported cases, veterinary pathology exams, detecting all sorts of strange anomalies that range from various chemicals, even one case that they detected mescaline in the animal. What do you make of that? And have you attempted to dovetail your work in looking at something that has the real potential of being in some ways a media-induced hysteria, but based on real cases, in my estimation? What do you think?
Yeah, these are, I haven't studied them in any details, so I'm a bit careful here, but there are, again, a number of explanations and that were given that are more mundane, and they were given. So I think we have to be careful into which case is actually good and which one is more problematic. Again, could there be something else more along the line of parapsychology? Let's say there's a predator, and that's where there's a synchronicity between the predator and what's going on in your head. So there might be some elements there, a warning of some sort, but really, I'm very speculating here. It's a world that I don't know much.
My favorite theory was proposed by my current co-author for my next book, David Perkins, who came to the conclusion after studying this since 1975. He kind of leaned on Carl Jung a little bit and suggested it could be a collective manifestation of guilt over the role of cattle in degradation of the environment and possible implications for human health, that it could be almost like a cultural stigmata that we're warning ourselves that cattle are so detrimental, and everybody on some level knows that, and these cases are being manifested collectively. I think it makes more sense than aliens coming to gather genetic material, which is the popular, again, like the ETH, it's crept into the whole cow mutilation phenomenon as well, which it's definitely the most popular theory. But it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would ETs sneak around in pastures when they could pick the lock on a slaughterhouse and get as much genetic material as they wanted?
Absolutely, and they could raise their own cattle if they want. I mean, in the end, right? So it's that explanation I found very weak. That doesn't mean that everything else is explained, but because the ETH is weak on this one.
Well, what do you think about collective manifestation of phenomenal effects, akin to a collective stigmata in the countryside?
It's an interesting explanation. I think there could be something along those lines happening, and I certainly encourage people to follow that lead because it seems promising from my perspective.
Yeah. Well, here's a good question from Ravensfee, who's very knowledgeable about hauntings, types of occult cases and that sort of thing. And she's wondering about self-negation. And she says, in many poltergeist activities, the focus of the phenomenon stereotypically is a troubled teenage girl. She's often found hoaxing an event alongside what appear to be genuine paranormal incidents. UFO events often occur amongst those who are prone to hoaxing or dissembling or otherwise not respectable. To what extent could human-generated psi effects be self-negating, both expressing them in a spectacular fashion and being simultaneously undermined by the people who are unconsciously creating them?
I would call it discovery of parapsychology. If you look at the mediums were used in the 19th century and early 20th century, some of them had really interesting information, like premonitions, clairvoyance, that really was information accessed by non-normal means. And yet, in all that mix, there were all kinds of fraud and hoaxing. It's very hard to separate the two with a clear line. And in a way, the fact that they need people around them to believe they're true for that to happen, it may explain psychologically why these things happen. But yes, if you think about UFO, I would think about the Belgian case where there was this famous picture. Now we know it's a hoax. But that picture played an important role in reinforcing the belief. And I would say, therefore, reinforcing the intensity of the phenomenon. So hoaxing in itself is actually probably part of the overall picture. It's one variable and an important one. It does not disqualify a case necessarily. This is something that most people are not used to in terms of thinking about the role of hoaxing. But I think we have to have a different approach in general.
So it's your feeling that there's a lot of hoaxing going on in the UFO field?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you read the internet, there's always the latest proof. Like every minute, there's a new latest proof. Yes, definitely. And that participates in maintaining alive the beliefs, which in turn, if there's enough beliefs, then once in a while you have a true anomaly happening. So it's a systemic view of the whole thing. The hoax is part of it.
One thing that really disturbs me when I go online, and especially on social media sites, because technology obviously is now much more affordable and special effects software is way more accessible now to the average person. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of extra time that are able to create some pretty impressive, elaborate hoaxes. Impressive to the average person with an untrained eye. Anyone with a trained eye that knows anything about the phenomenon and how to analyze visual data pertaining to the phenomenon can pick out the hoaxes pretty easily.
With Gene and Chris and Eric Ouellet, you're in
the Paracast.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
No other network provides the level of customer service we do. When it comes to radio advertising, we are your one-stop shop. And no matter how big or small your business is, we can help. Email us at advertise@gcnlive.com, and an experienced advertising executive will help you take the first step towards driving more customers to your business or website. Advertise at gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pulaski of the Pulaski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states.
Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
You're fired. According to the Small Business Administration, 75% of small businesses plan to eliminate jobs or reduce workers' hours to part-time. You're fired. According to Gallup, the unemployment rate recently jumped to nearly 9%, and the underemployment rate hit a staggering 17.9%. You're fired. 1 out of 3 young adults and 1 out of 2 recent college graduates are underemployed. Hello, I'm Keith Abel, a pharmacist and a home business entrepreneur. In 2011, I became one of those statistics myself. Instead of looking for another job in corporate America, I joined Dr. Joel Ouelett, the Dead Doctors Don't Lie guy. We're creating steady incomes for ourselves and would like to show you how to do the same. If you want to supplement your current income, replace your income, so you don't have to become one of the statistics, then give me a call toll-free at 866-257-3105, 866-257-3105. You're fired. Don't wait till you hear those words. Start creating an extra income today. 866-257-3105.
My dad was 59 when he collapsed from a heart attack late last year. Just this past August was when we spread his ashes on the St. Croix River. I loved my dad, but boy was he stubborn. He hadn't been to the doctor in over 25 years. His excuse? He simply couldn't afford it. He wasn't a rich man by any means. At less than $107 per month, libertyoncall.org would have been the perfect alternative for my father. Don't wait. Go to libertyoncall.org right now, for not just your sake, but for the sake of your loved ones. Again, that's libertyoncall.org.
Sciatica, lower back pain, hip pain, poor posture. If you suffer from any of these problems, get ready to relax. Introducing an amazing product that's been in the market for over 25 years, the Sacro Wedgie. It was invented by a football coach using a common-sense osteopath technique. He created this device to help his athletes by isolating and supporting the sacrum, which is the keystone of our anatomy. This wedge-shaped bone is in the center of our hips, where a lot of pain starts. Simply relax 20 minutes daily on the amazingly simple Sacro Wedgie and let gravity do the work, helping muscles rebalance and start releasing nerves. Sit in the Sacro Wedgie at the computer or while traveling to help correct posture to finally help relieve those stubborn aches and pains for only $33.95. It's made in the USA, so click the family-owned website at sacrowedgie.com, spelled SACROWEDGY.com, or call 1-800-737-9295. That's 1-800-737-9295. Relax your back pain away with the Sacro Wedgie.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned into the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
With Gene and Chris and Eric Ouellet, author of Illuminations. We're talking about hoaxing. Chris?
Yeah, my basic point here, Eric, was that I think the hoaxing is actually has the unintended side effect, if you will, of creating erroneous ideas and cementing erroneous memes into the culture. And that what we're doing is we're actually, instead of, when you try to point out a hoax or you try to dissuade people from buying into stuff that they're not trained to really observe and pass judgment on, that you become the bad guy. And people are saying, well, you're a skeptic. You don't believe in this stuff. And it's like, well, I believe that there's a phenomenon, but I don't believe that there's a lot of people out there that are really qualified to analyze visual evidence. With the proliferation of kids with really creative minds, basically they're creating hoaxes that are based on, a 50s kind of idealized view of UFO craft, if you will. And I think it has the unintended side effect of really not only muddying up the waters, but also potentially creating a collective unconscious backlash. And it's almost like, if we make enough hoaxes and enough people buy into them, pretty soon hoaxed UFOs are going to turn up and they'll be real.
I agree with you on this one. And that when I introduced my controversial theory about the role of ufologists killing UFOs, that's pretty much what I had in mind. So hoaxing is part of creating the beliefs. Is there's too much of it, then people start to disbelieve. And absolutely, it's a matter. Things have to be in balance, and things always change and evolve over time. So if you think about the spiritist seance of the 19th century, there was a lot. Eventually, it became so stupid that people just gave up on that and moved on. Whatever is left of it is the Ouija game you can buy at any big store where you live. So things have the tendency to evolve that way, but something else picks up later on, whatever it is.
Okay, we're kind of running out of time, and I want to make sure that we discuss this particular aspect, and that is Rupert Sheldrake's idea of the morphogenic field. I think this is a fascinating and very important potential explanation to explain, waves of UFOs, people having simultaneous events. Why don't you first give our new listeners an idea and kind of define what morphogenic field is and how Sheldrake applied it?
Okay, morphogenic fields at the origin is this notion that the question is why almost all animals and people have four legs. I mean, 2 legs and 2 arms, or 4 legs, 1 head, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Why there's not more diversity in the overall nature? So one of the explanation is that there is if you want a template that exists and that's reproduced in other species, and as species change, that template remains available. So this notion, if we extend it to from areas of reality to the next, so from the psychological to the biological, or from the biological to the physical, these templates can also be seen repeating themselves. And so that could be an interesting way to look at paranormal phenomena, is that the template you have in your mind, in your psychology, in your unconscious about conflicts is repeated in reality, and therefore that's what we call psychokinesis. So you're angry and suddenly a glass in your cupboard explodes. So that's an example of morphogenic fields, that the same template is repeating itself but in a completely different field. So your mind and the physical construct of a glass. So this is a powerful way to explain how we may have all kinds of events that seems to be repeating the same symbolic content across different things. So the scare of a war with the Soviet Union, then scare of air attack, and then we see UFOs. So these are examples of that the same template is repeated in all kinds of instances. So that's in a nutshell what Sheldrake is talking about.
Loved his example of monkeys on one island in northern Japan learning how to wash sand off potatoes, and instantly all the monkeys, even unrelated to the group that was being taught by the original monkey that had the realization that we can wash the sand off our potatoes by dipping them in water, all of a sudden all the monkeys were able to do that. And that would be an example of some sort of impact or effect filtering through the morphogenic field, which, and Sheldrake, unfortunately, has really been beat up over some of his work, looking at pets, relationships with their owners. I really do admire him as being a very, very creative thinker. Here's a question for you that I've been kicking around in my own mind for a while. The role of proactive UFO investigation. What sort of tips or ideas would you have to go after a hard data monitoring approach, but being open to these type of parasociological impacts. One thing that I've always done is contend that the experiencer is more important than what they experience, and that the entire focus of ufology has been backwards, that people should be concerned with looking at the experiencers of these phenomena as opposed to trying to get as much nuts and bolts information as possible. There needs to be a blending of the two. What sort of suggestions would you have for ufologists who are coming into the field with open, fertile minds and wanting to move forward in a potentially successful way?
Well, I agree. I totally agree with you that the experiencers should be number one, and then by a long shot, they should be the number one. Practically, essentially, it is about try to know them, and it takes more time and more meetings. There's a practical aspects to it, but to give it a chance to understand where they come from, what's going on in their life. And I mean, within, of course, respect of their privacy, but it's important to see how their preoccupations may have had an impact on what's going on. So that's one aspect. And then, of course, if there's a group of witnesses, then try to understand what's their dynamics beyond the surface, which again takes time. But these are very useful because then we can see if there are unconscious and shared unconscious issues that might have been part of the anomaly they've seen. And then you have to look around. In that community, is there something going on? And that going on is usually not very visible because it's unconscious. That's definitely seek out and see what's going on. Talk to people, understand what's going on in their lives. And the other aspect, of course, is this one is maybe more challenging, but it's probably the one that's most rewarding, is try to figure out if there is any symbolism in the event.
So as you can see, neither rain nor snow or a bad flu will keep me from being on the Paracast. We've been around for about 10 years now, and at the end of February, we'll be entering our 11th year of steady broadcasting, never, ever missing a show. So we're thinking about some kind of 10-year wrap-up show. We're working on that. But next week, we'll have author Whitley Strieber. After all these years, we've managed to get him. And please don't forget to check out the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com. Once again, that's the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com. We offer the ad-free version of this show. We also offer the After the Paracast podcast exclusive to Paracast Plus members. If you're curious, you want to know what it's all about, check out plus.theparacast.com. Go to plus.theparacast.com. We have Eric, Ouelett, and Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. Lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
Removing bad taste and odor from your drinking water is easy. Removing the bad stuff you don't taste is what ProPure does best. Water the way nature meant it to be. Clean, crisp, and refreshing. See the complete line of ProPure countertop, inline, gravity, and household water filtration products. Visit your authorized ProPure dealer or ProPureUSA.com. That's ProPureUSA.com or call 800-544-3533.
By now you know that wireless technology like cell phones do in fact pose dangers to the health and privacy of everyone. Block-It Pocket's wide range of products are unmatched in providing the protection you deserve. No scare tactics, just common sense. BlockItPocket.com offers quality American-made options to alleviate and eliminate these invisible dangers. Learn more at BlockItPocket.com or call 888-315-9618. BlockItPocket.com, enhancing health and privacy.
We use mobile devices right against our bodies every day, but growing scientific evidence has emerged showing serious health risks associated with exposure to EMF radiation emitted from these devices. The solution is Defender Shield, the most effective mobile radiation shielding ever developed. Defender Shield blocks virtually 100% of EMF radiation from cell phones, tablets, and laptops, and starts at just $64.99. Buy now at DefenderShield.com. For 10% off, use promo code GCN. DefenderShield.com, the worldwide leader in mobile radiation shielding.
Are you sneezing, coughing, and aching? Do you have a sore throat, a fever, or the sniffles? There's no reason to be sick this cold and flu season with immune system support from Supernatural Silver. Supernatural Silver can give your body the help it needs to fight off harmful pathogens without hurting beneficial gut flora and without leaving behind resistant bacteria. Antibiotics can damage good microflora and often leave behind bacteria which can cause problems later on. If you're sick of being sick, try Supernatural Silver. Supernatural Silver, the #1 choice of thousands for a safe and effective way to protect against the many diseases and illnesses that we are facing today. Go to supernaturalsilver.com, read our customer reviews, and see the life-changing results that people are having. That's supernaturalsilver.com. Supernaturalsilver.com. Use the promo code PROTECTED for 20% off your entire order. And like us on Facebook. Supernatural Silver.
Most of you know that heart disease is the #1 silent killer in the U.S. What if I told you for just $54.95 a month you could fight against heart disease naturally? At Heart and Body Extract, we've been helping thousands of people get back to a healthier heart. Don't just take my word for it. Check out all of the success stories at hbextract.com. Or to order, call 866-295-5305. That's 866-295-5305. hbextract.com. Don't risk it when you can take charge of it.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Okay, so an example of symbolism, Eric Ouellet, explain.
Yes. An example is like the example I gave about the two cars in Hamilton. Maybe these two groups of people are bound to meet each other, and there was some sort of premonition that to bring them together. So it could be that kind of symbolism, very subtle but yet powerful. Another example is in my book. There was a lady that saw a green light moving in her house in the smoke, and yeah, that lady, she was, and she still is a heavy smoker. Was it maybe a way for her to be told that maybe she should cut smoking? These are examples that are fairly simple, but you may have some symbolism that's much more complex to decipher. But any data, any piece of evidence from the witnesses, from their lives, from their community, from their surrounding, that may help to put together what symbolism is behind, this always useful, because then we can make a connection in terms of, did they actually access information in ways that are not normals? If we can do that, then we definitely have put the finger on the core aspect of what's going on.
I absolutely agree. A good example would be in the San Luis Valley in south central Colorado, where I investigated pretty full-time for 10 years. Not only would I be out investigating reports of the paranormal, UFOs, cattle mutilations, and that sort of thing, but I would at the same time be noting aberrant social behavior, strange outbreaks of fires, unusual amounts of roadkill, strange weather. I would always factor these types of things in addition to unexplained military activity. And I think all these things somehow were connected, and these waves of events tended to be cross-phenomenal. In other words, in one case, we had a wave of UFO sightings that dovetailed at the same time as the bell curve, as the surprise was wearing off and it started to really settle in, a series of Bigfoot reports, and then, along with the UFO sightings, and then the UFO sightings went along for a while, and you had unusual military activity, NORAD reporting something that appeared to be a UFO to witnesses. At the same time this was going on, we had, some really strange societal events that were going on. We had one weekend where we had a huge mini wave of UFO sightings and a wedding of a popular, very well-to-do family in the valley. A sister was getting married, and her younger sister was the head bridesmaid. And at the reception, the younger sister knifed the bride to death in a fit of rage. And we had 12 unusual fires that broke out, and also animals were getting slaughtered on the roads by cars left and right. I just couldn't help but think that there was a connection there. And I think for investigators who are coming up in this field, you got to have your mind open to other attendant events that may somehow be related on some level to the actual more nuts and bolts phenomenal events.
No, it's a good way to do that, but it's more labor intensive. So that's the challenge of this.
Well, if you really want to do something, the best way to do it is the right way, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
This is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for people that are wanting to try to do this all in their armchair on their cell phone. You got to get out and, log some miles and hone your interviewing skills. I think that's very important. Another thing I think that you kind of hinted at before is it's really important to follow up with people. Find out how that experience changed their thinking, if it did, and how that change of thinking has morphed into a more refined sort of belief system around these events. And then check back with them periodically and find out if there have been any other follow-up events. Oftentimes, people that have an unusual event and it gets notoriety, they won't report those events for fear of the glare of publicity and being stigmatized by, oh, that's the person that is always seeing this or always experiencing that. So oftentimes, the only way you're going to find out if a person is having more events occur around them is to go and at least establish a relationship with them and do some follow-up. And that's not something that you see in the MUFON model. People go out, they get the information, they're gone, and out of Dodge, end of report. And that's not the way to do it. And I think, Eric, you'll agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you that it's important to keep in touch with people afterward. If only is to see if their event they had maybe some premonition value, so you can at least check that. But furthermore,